do this live, and I'm using some new software, and it hasn't been going so well. So my experience with this new piece of software is not the best so far. Hopefully, I can iron out some of the bugs here and get it to work. Anyways, I am getting ready to jump into the weekend. It's been a long week here in the Baxter household, so I'm ready for the weekend for sure. But what I want to talk about today is really around the comparison trap. And you might have heard this before. The idea behind the comparison trap is that we fall prey into comparing ourselves to others. And it's probably a natural human trait to do this, but it's things have kind of become a little bit more complicated in today's society, mainly due to social media. And social media allows us to compare ourselves not only to our immediate group of people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, which is fairly small, but then on social media, you can compare yourself to millions and millions of people. And that's, more than ever before. And the other problem with social media is that it's often not realistic. It's not real. People put stuff on social media that is generally highlights the positives in their lives and not necessarily the negatives. So it becomes somewhat of a highlight reel, and you end up comparing yourself to something that's quite unrealistic, right? And that's unfortunate, and can set false expectations of how you might compare to other people. Um, so that's kind of the idea behind the comparison trap. So as a solution to that, I often tell people to try to compare themselves to themselves, right? Because what's the best barometer of success other than yourself, how you were yesterday, the day before, a year ago, a month ago, the last time you worked out, the last time you dieted, whatever. Um, but there is one caveat to that type of comparison. It's another type of comparison trap with yourself, is that unfortunately you're not static. You um, are always changing. Your body is always changing. The environment around you is always changing. And this then affects various outcomes in your life. Maybe they're good effects or maybe they're negative effects. It kind of all depends, but we're always changing. So, a good example of this is, oh, I'm going to compare my mobility at 105 years old to my mobility when I was 10 years old. Well, when you're 10 years old, I'm guarantee you're going to be more mobile than you were at 105 years old. But that's not really a fair comparison, right? You're completely different points in your life, and to try to say that you want to be as mobile as you were when were 10 years old is just probably unrealistic, right? It's just there's nothing you could have done or could do to get there. So it's not a fair comparison, right? We see this oftentimes with things like, people say, "Oh, I want to weigh the same I did when I got married or before I had kids or whatever," right? And unfortunately, I'm not saying it's impossible to, maybe get to the same point body composition wise, but you're probably gonna have to take a different method, a different approach. It might be a lot harder because your life is completely different now than it was, 10, 15 years ago. And this can be in a much shorter time frame too. Like imagine it's not uncommon for someone to get married, buy a house, and have kids all within a year, right? That can all happen. Those are huge life changes, right? And so to make a comparison to the way your life was, or how you looked, or the amount of exercise you could do, or how you performed athletically, or your sleep, or your digestion, or your body composition to what it was a year ago might not be a very fair comparison because your life is 100% different than it was a year ago. And again, I'm not saying that you can't achieve those things. You can, but you might have to take a different approach, be more realistic with the time frame, understand that you probably have different priorities now, and that maybe working out, 20 hours a week is not going to be realistic at this point. So, maybe, being completely shredded is not going to happen at this point, right? And not to say that it can't happen in the future, but maybe right now is not the right time. So all these things play into, how we perform, how we look, how we feel, how we eat, how we sleep. And we need to, when we want to make changes, we need to realize that the changes that we want to make might not be as easy or as achievable as they were, or realistic as they were at some point in time prior to that, right? It is not anything you're doing wrong. It's not anything that you could have done differently in many cases. It's just the side effect of, time in different circumstances and your body changing. And that's normal. And it's something you have to accept and prepare for. So coming back to my point, when you're using yourself as a comparison, you need to take into account where you are today in the life situation you're in today and where you're comparing it to. Are those two points in time, are they the same? Are they similar? Is it a fair comparison? And you can't lie to yourself. You can't just be like, yeah, everything's exactly the same as it was a year ago, and meanwhile you have a house, a kid, and a wife, right? It's not. I'm sorry. As much as you might want it to be or think it is, it's probably very different and not a fair comparison. So that's something that, again, I always like this terminology, but the context is important. The context in which you were operating a year ago needs to be somewhat similar to the context you are today. So keep that in mind. With that said, if you'd like to get all this content that I put out, the videos, the newsletters, the blog posts, delivered directly to your inbox, as opposed to having to stalk me on social media, you can go to rjbhealth.coach. At the top, there's a newsletter link. You click that link, and you can sign up for the newsletter, and I will just email everything to you, so you never miss out. If you are interested in any kind of coaching or have questions or comments or interested in coaching, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can go to my homepage at rjbhealth.coach, and at the top there's a link called Schedule Discovery Call. Click that link and we can jump on a Zoom call and talk a little bit more about whether it would be a good fit to work together. I have a couple of spots open, so happy to take on some more clients if you're interested. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns about things that I talked about today or anything else, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below or direct message me or reach out in any way. I'm always happy to chat. With that, I hope everyone has a good weekend, and I'll talk to you guys all next week.